Welcome to Women Together. My name is Antoinette, and it is wonderful to be together today. I know that we have a number of people who are still coming into the room, so I feel like this is a just gathering moment. Collect yourself and your seat, and we can start to just write in the chat a little hello. And we often like to share where we're coming from. Sometimes we like to share the weather. It's beautiful and sunny. I feel like we made it through winter here in New York. I'm standing on Lenape land that's known as Cortlandt Manor. And it's just north of New York City. So I'm glad to be here with all of you coming in from all over the country of the United States, and also some from different parts of the world. We've had some incredible groups of us coming together. So today is very special. A happy International Women's Day. I know that many of us were celebrating yesterday, and there has been lots going on to celebrate. So yesterday I attended a women's circle, and it had, somewhat similar, but it was over 100 women coming together, and it just, had that same familiar experience of what happens when women come together. There's a sense of possibility. There's a sense of care and connection and kindness. And I think, one of the things that Eileen talks about is how can we move to lifting each other up? So when women come together, we lift each other up. So today, the way this is going to work, we are sharing together. I also recognize that there are many of us who have been to the Women Together events before. A warm welcome back. It's good to see everybody. I like going to the gallery and waving a little hello. I know it's a little funny because I can't see everyone at the same time, but I go through and say hello. It's good to see you. Wonderful. So, and for those of you who may just be joining for the first time, a warm welcome to each of you as well. It is, we've been gathering together in this way week after week throughout the pandemic. We had been gathering monthly before that, and, really just a space for us to make new friends, meet new people, be, together, and then also to just meet each other and find a place of inner freedom, and have that place of inner and outer freedom really be what guides us in how we show up together in our communities and in our world. So that's what we're doing here. We do some tiny practices to just allow us to drop into that. So I will share a little bit more about that, but just to note where we're coming in from, we've got Boulder, Colorado. We've got Chandler, Arizona, sunny, warm, suburban Philadelphia. Thanks, Ruth Ann. Winchester, Massachusetts, Vermont, Delray Beach, Florida, Wellesley, Massachusetts, Solana Beach, California. I love it. Another suburban Philly. Spring is coming. Agreed. Minneapolis, Rye, a lot of Halifax, Nova Scotia. Welcome. Lake Oswego, San Diego, Toronto. Wonderful. So Irvington, it's our home in some ways. We've spent a lot of time in Irvington over the years. So, and our Eileen Fisher home is in Irvington. And Eileen really started this from a place of wanting to create comfort within herself. She created comfortable clothing, and that worked out for a lot of us. And then she thought, well, what if I share these practices that have worked for me? So some of that are tiny practices like meditation, journaling. They're practices that she does every morning. And I remember 10 years ago when I started working with her, I, would talk to her about some of these things. And for me, it was like these life-changing little openings that, oh, that's easy. I can do that. So, there are lots of these tiny little practices that don't require us going hours away or spending weeks in meditation, although I would love that too. Um, these little moments of just being able to have a tiny practice where we can wake up and come back to ourselves. We can tune back into the nature of who we are as human beings and as women. And so that's just what we'll do here today. We'll spend a few moments doing some tiny practices, have a little discussion, and turn to each other. And today, as I said, it's a very special day. It's about celebrating women. So it's something that I feel we do every week, but we will be doing a few activities around celebrating what it means to be a woman. And I'll bring in some of the thoughts and voices of women who have kind of guided our thinking and time together around what it means to be a woman. And then we will turn to each other, which I think is the true magic of Women Together, is turning to each other in small groups. So if you're joining on Zoom, you'll be able to join a small breakout room and have the conversation. And if you're on YouTube, maybe you find a few friends and find ways to lift each other up too. So before we go much further, we will just do a moment of stillness and just landing in wherever we are. And I do that by bringing in a little singing bowl. So these are, I've mentioned often before, but we have these singing bowls in Eileen Fisher conference rooms. It says for conference room use only. And I have now been for a year in this living room sharing with my little conference room singing bowl with each of you. So, and I think actually this moment this week a year ago was when we were saying, okay, here it is, and next week is the kind of anniversary of us starting these Women Together conversations in this way. So I'm holding that in my reflection this week of where we were a year ago, and we thought, oh, it'll maybe be a couple weeks to where we are now, and just perhaps invite you into that space of reflection. And the way we can do that is just putting 2 feet flat on the ground, if that's available to you. Just feel the immediate feeling of what it feels like to put your feet on the ground, to just turn your energy to feet on the ground. Just tuning into the breath, perhaps noticing the temperature of the breath, the feeling of the breath moving in and out of the body. You can close your eyes or lower your gaze if that's comfortable. Feeling both the connection to the earth and the connection to the space just above the head. Maybe that's sky. And with each breath, you feel the energy moving from the earth to the sky inside this body. And I'll ring the sound of the bell to bring us into the moment of stillness. And I'll ring the sound of the bell to bring us back together. Thanks, everybody. I feel like for me, that has always brought me from whatever space I've been in, whether it's another meeting or call or something, and just allows me to one little tiny minute to come back to ourselves. So, and landing to being here with each other, and I just imagine us as a circle of beings together on the planet. And I have always loved the intimacy of in-person connection, but these virtual connections, I just imagine us sitting in a circle together. So, and that's how I feel in the Zoom rooms. So what I'd love to hear is, and if you haven't already found the chat, you can click chat at the bottom of your Zoom screen or type directly in the comments on YouTube and share with each other what brought you here today? What brought you here to this conversation around celebrating women, to being in this group of women together? And it could be quite simple. It could be something new. So what brought you here today in this moment? What brought you here? You can type that into the chat and I'll read a few of them out. And I'll just say, Francis said, I'm glad you're there for us. And what I will say to that is, I'm glad we are there for each other, because we have all shown up in one way or another for each other. So that is incredibly powerful. So wonderful. Alicia said she came because of the need for connection with all kinds of women. Mary, important to be with women on this day, designed to celebrate us. Yes. Karen, need to connect. Marion, centering. Diane, positivity and reassurance that she gains from this group. Jean, the love the connection with other women. Terry, connection with feminine energy and spirit. Suzanne, weekly inspiration. Carol, breaking through the isolation of COVID. Patricia, I look forward to this time every week. It is good to connect. Nalini, need to maintain that balance. Yes. Kimberly, a moment of peace with like intention, supportive women. Marian, feeling a little not like myself in the past few weeks, needed to get back to myself. Carly, to continue being intentional. AC, we're not only celebrating our first coronaversary, we made it. And as women, we should really celebrate holding it all together. I feel like we should just be cheering. Yes, we made it. And we're really holding it together. So congratulations, everyone, on our coronaversary and for making it together. Sarah has had a rough week and she needed to touch down in a safe landing space. We are holding you. We are together. Francis, weariness. Eileen, no better place to be as we celebrate women in all walks of life. Marcia, this is a beautiful space for comfort and love. To celebrate this amazing connection with all the women I've met from all over. Thanks, Helen. Grace Ann. Grace Ann, seeing personal example of young women being manipulated, looking for strength during this time of stress. We have been through it this year on every level, and it's not just this year, of course, but it's sort of this year having to, sit in our own spaces and really have our eyes open to what's going on. We're seeing and holding so much, it's exhausting and it can be stressful. And yet, as we just said, that we have made it through this year and whatever may come, we're resilient enough to handle it. So the reminder of that. This one is from iPad. So thank you, iPad. I don't know your name and that's okay. I came to be with my weekly Women Together, sharing our feelings as women in this world. Wonderful. Paula, coming together with wonderful women who can bring me back to earth and feel a part of calm and connection or collection. Wonderful. Ooh, Deborah, I find abundant goddess energy in gathering with groups of like-minded women. I read these to share what's coming up, but I also read them because this is our intention that we are creating together. I see it as almost like little puzzle pieces that they come together and they make this fullness of the puzzle of what is our collective intention and what we create as we come together and what we're holding, not just for ourselves, but for our communities and our world. So I just keep reading a few more of them out, taking any opportunity to program and connect with others who communicate love and sharing. Yes. Wonderful. Interest in connecting with other people who I might not have the opportunity to meet otherwise. New inspiration and insight during COVID, working on growing and staying positive. I've been thinking a little bit about that too, how we can actually bring ourselves into connection with a positive community, because oftentimes when I turn to other people, either I start complaining or they start complaining, and then we sort of start spiraling into this, like, I don't even know how we got there. We're just talking, there's a lot of bad to focus on in the world, and we do that. So, and then it starts just kind of going at each other, and it just never ends well. So whenever I can find ways to bring together positive community, um it's, I love being part of it and I love hearing it. So thank you all for being part of co-creating that, because it is a co-creation, and it is something that we have to be intentional about. And when we do that, when we create a community of positive sharing and intention holding and gratitude, we not only um, are able to kind of feed off of that ourselves, but then we bring that out into the lives of others around us too. I find that after a Women Together session, I kind of turn around, I'm like, how great is the world and life? So, so even if we've talked about some pretty rough things, I'm like, oh, but how great it is that we have this, possibility and connection with each other. So I'm celebrating today, all of that. Yeah, Nancy just said, with all of the negativity out there, looking for a glimmer of positivity. So I hope that you just got a little glimmer of it there. Um, so yes, it's wonderful to be able to connect in this way. I have a few thoughts to share, as I tend to do when it's me holding these sessions. And part of these sessions where I've been holding them are just holding the heartbeat of our community. So it's in part to just practice the practices. And every other week, we're bringing in teachers over the next couple of months. So some of our favorites, some new friends, and so that will be wonderful to have additional practices from them. But the way that I kind of hold the space for us is to just explore together and really listen in. And to do that, I'm also bringing in some quotes. So sometimes I bring in some poems, sometimes I bring in quotes. I wanted to bring in a few women who I admire. And I'll be honest, a lot of what we do in this Women Together space is we practice contemplative or reflective practices, often rooted in mindfulness. And other, different areas or streams of lineage. And I don't often, I try to find women and women of color in those spaces. And I found that I wasn't able to find a lot of women or women of color in mindfulness and contemplative practice who are talking about what it means to be a woman in mindfulness or contemplative practice. So I thought that was interesting. And I just wanted to share that because it's something to just think about. How do we lift up voices of women in that space as well? And I know that there are some who we love: Pema Chodron, of course, Tara Brach, Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, and there are many others. But just thinking about how do we think about that, and what it means to be a woman and how we lift ourselves up. That said, there are some fantastic women who are maybe more intellectuals or activists who have spoken to some of the reflective and contemplative practices that we often use here to find that space of inner freedom. Because when we have that inner space within, it's almost, I think about it when, I don't know, I've also been talking about doing women and money as a topic, so I'd love to hear if that's interesting for all of us. But one of the things that I've been thinking about is when you think about financial literacy, it's not just about, how do you make more money? It's about how do you actually think about how you save and spend more money. And if we think about that with our energy as well, if we think about that with how we put out anything into the world, is how we're putting, anything into our own bodies and into our own minds, how we're consuming, we can actually think about how we can actually begin to change our world just by changing our thoughts and our mindset. So Yeah. So one thing I'll share is just a few little quotes. It is in collectives that we find reservoirs of hope and optimism. And that is Angela Davis. And I think that just framing why we come together as women coming together, Gloria Steinem said, women may be the one group that grows more radical with age. And I love that because I feel like it's, it's been true for me as a younger woman. And I also continue to look forward to becoming more and more radical with every passing day. And the simplicity of radical, meaning that we are actually just grasping at something by its roots. And that was another Angela Davis kind of concept, is thinking about what does radical actually mean. Um, and a couple of other thoughts. Bell Hooks said, when we drop fear, we can draw nearer to other people. We can draw nearer to the earth. We can draw nearer to all the heavenly creatures that surround us. And again, that's Bell Hooks. So I'm just going to put that one in the chat because I find that some of it happens just by coming together and being collective, but some of it happens by actually what Bell Hooks is saying. When we drop fear, we can draw nearer to other people. We can draw nearer to the earth. We can draw nearer to all the heavenly creatures that surround us. And I wonder, when I think about what it means to be woman, what I think about what it means to be human on this planet, and accessing all of the parts of my humanity, I think about what that actually means to drop fear, to voice to voice what's going on for me or voice my experience. And we've seen that happening over the last days and weeks and months of women sharing their experience and years. So that's wonderful to just kind of drop into a little bit. And I'm just saying these to just sprinkle little seeds for us today. And then finally, as we celebrate women and we consider what it means to be a woman on this planet, Audre Lorde says, I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own. And that's, again, Audre Lorde. And I think that it just reminds me that, when we are actually searching for our freedom, we each have to free ourselves, and we each have to look at the places where we can free each other and really create space for that. So, and I have found that there are many women in my life who have done that. So Eileen is one of them, of course, and Cheryl Campbell, who was the leader of the foundation when I first came in and started running our young women's leadership programs. They, as women who have done their work and are integrated women, not to say that there's perfection there, but in any of us, but they have really worked to find that integration within themselves. That's what allowed me to be able to come in and bring my gifts and make my fullest contributions. And I think when we are creating blockages in ourselves, then we create those blockages for others around us. And so I just bring that in as a reflection of what are the ways that when we are holding on to our fear or holding on to our ego or holding on to, the parts of ourselves that we can't seem to find acceptance for or with, that we block ourselves from really being in the fullness of who we are and making our fullest contribution, and block others around us as well. So a friend of mine I was speaking to yesterday, she has, like many, many women, crawled out of the rubble, for her literally and figuratively. And she was sharing some of her stories of this year with me. And she said that the mantra that she's had for this year is evolve or repeat. And I felt that so deeply in my heart and in my spirit of what does it mean that we can actually celebrate ourselves, celebrate the women around us, and that we can actually do our work in service of our own freedom and the freedom of the women around us and others around us, and the reality of how many times in our lives have we repeated the same pattern, the same pattern, the same pattern. And so if we don't do our work, what's the danger of that? If we don't do the work to integrate and find wholeness and healing, then we continue to repeat the same stuff over and over and over again. And who does that help? So hopefully we get a new lesson each time, but I loved that. And I loved also the resilience that is. I told her when she was telling me her stories, I said, you are the phoenix, you're the phoenix that keeps rising up out of the ashes. And I see that in each one of you. And I see that because, just in the showing up really, and the showing up for the many people who you've all been showing up for. And I see that in myself. And yeah, so the activity, the little tiny practice that I want to guide us into is a little journaling. We'll do a little meditation, maybe, and some journaling, but really on what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be this woman who rises up from the ashes over and over again, who learns her lessons and has much to celebrate and much to move forward with? So perhaps with all of that said, we take another little moment, and we'll just, yeah, take a breath together. And just sit with what came up. Perhaps sit with when we drop fear. What can we draw nearer to? Where is it that we find reservoirs of hope and optimism? That we continue to evolve. And if you'd like to close your eyes or just soften your gaze, perhaps for a moment, tune into an experience of your own life, maybe digging into memories of the past. When was it that you felt yourself as woman? There are many, many parts of our identities. When was maybe one of the first times that you experienced being a woman? This is it. If you'd like to jot that down, you can do that in your journal. If you'd like to keep this as a meditation, you can take a moment to just meditate or jot it down. So, when was that first moment when you experienced the feeling of being a woman? And perhaps there are some other women who have inspired you or who have opened the path for you along your way. If you'd like to write the names of those women down, you can do that. And if you'd like to just stay in a visualization, perhaps just call them to mind and feel each one of them with the hand on one of your shoulders. Then, what are some of the traits or actions or characteristics from those women that have inspired you? perhaps the place where you've seen them dropping fear or being the phoenix, showing up with resilience. And again, if you're visualizing this, perhaps just visualize those characteristics as points of light on those women who have their hands on your shoulder. And then if you do, where do you see those traits or characteristics in yourself or your own story? And you can write that down. Or if you're visualizing it, perhaps those women who have their hands on your shoulder brings their hand to your heart and finds those points of light in you. So again, where do you see those traits or characteristics in yourself? And perhaps in the noticing of those characteristics and traits, if you're anything like me, you also see the parts of yourself that are still in need of healing. And just for a moment, you can jot some of those down. What are the parts of you that are still in need of healing? Maybe it's that inner little girl who's still crying out for something. And for just a moment, you could even put your own hand on your heart. So if you're visualizing this, you can put your own hand on your heart and just be with her for that moment. Just feel the warmth. And just softly reconnecting with her, seeing any suffering that may still be there, letting her know that it's okay. When you're ready, we're going to move into breakout rooms. And this time we're going to bring a prompt into our breakouts. And so we'll share with each other our name, where we're coming from, any little tidbits, but we'll also use the prompt, what I see in you that I see in me. So as you turn to each other, what I see in you that I see in me. And it's that same example of seeing the phoenix in this other woman who, whether you know her well or not, you know that the woman across from you has been through something, has a story to share. So just noticing in your small rooms, we're going to do 2 or 3 people in each room, and just noticing, what is it that I see in you that I also see in me? Maybe those traits or characteristics. Just try and follow that prompt, what I see in you that I see in me. And remember, as we listen to each other, I often say, we may not know what the other person had for breakfast, let alone our life stories. So we're just going to be with each other and hold space for one another for 20 minutes. And we will be back in here about 5 minutes before the top of the hour. So what I see in you that I see in me, and some kind of celebration. If you have something that you're celebrating for each other, for yourselves, feel free to bring that in as well. So celebrating each other, what I see in you that I see in me. Enjoy your time together. I'll see you in 20 minutes.